Hello, everybody. I wanted to kind of show you some examples of how historians in the real world actually have to figure out all kinds of management strategies when it comes to documents and artifacts. And very often, this encourages the thought process of the 5 C's of historical thinking, which we learned about in the last module, and which I'm sure all of you were already familiar. Uh, Camp Security is a Revolutionary War prison camp which existed to the east of York, Pennsylvania. And I've been actively helping the people of Camp Security manage a lot of their historical resources. One of the biggest challenges, well, the number one biggest challenge is they are continuously trying to find evidence of the camp by every year doing archaeological field work. Beyond that, there are all kinds of modern day remote sensing processes that are happening. And beyond that, there are all sorts of types of research going into the past to try to figure out clues as to where the camp actually was. So, one of the challenges that Camp Security has is trying to archive and pull together all of these really bizarre resources across lots of time periods and then make them manageable in some way. And this is something that digital historians are often challenged with. So, in the Camp Security website, which I developed, you'll see there is a link here, Camp Security Virtual Museum. This virtual museum is built upon a framework that's called Omeka, which we'll have you look at a little later in the module. And Omeka is designed for exactly this kind of process to try to collect all kinds of documents and artifacts and then create a way for them to be easily searched so that people can research easily and find information easily. And that usually really helps projects get along because everything kind of ends up in one place. All of this, all of these things are actually really useful tools for students because this, of course, this concept of collecting things and organizing things and making them searchable is a very 21st century kind of concept. So, brief introduction to this. So, Camp Security Virtual Museum so far has, I think, 100 and something different sources. Some of them are from the period, the actual period of the American Revolution. Many of them are from the period after the American Revolution, where many of the guards who had worked at the camp were trying to get pensions in their old age. And then many of these are also sort of newspaper articles from people working on the archaeological site through the years. There are modern day archaeological reports. And so all of these things are really, really disparate. So I'm going to show you one of the most simple functionalities. We're going to go to Browse Items and Browse by Tag, and we're going to look at tags. So tags within something like a virtual museum are kind of like hashtags on Twitter, or if you've seen people use hashtags on Facebook. Uh, these artifacts and documents are organized firstly into collections and then secondly into tags because often you can actually search for things across collections by using tags. So of all of the things I've put into the museum here, I can say that these are the most descriptive and useful tags. So to give you an idea how this works, let me just show you the collections. I've got 5 collections of items. General historical sources, archaeological reports, camp security news, prisoner related, guards related. Okay, so pretty straightforward. So if I, for example, found a new example of a prisoner list, I would put it in prisoner related sources. Uh, if I look at tags, pop back here to browse by tag, these could actually cut across many of those things. So, for example, there are certain kinds of prisoners within camp security and camp indulgence, and I could search for the type of prisoners. Even though both of these prisoners are actually British prisoners, they were actually captured at different times, so they're separated. So that kind of separates that. I may have something about guards in prisoner of war camps in general in the American Revolution, and that would go in general historical. I could have a letter from a prisoner and a letter from a guard. And even though guards and prisoners are in two different collections, they would both be listed under primary sources. So in any of these cases, if I click any particular one of these, like let's do prisoners, everything that I tagged with prisoners is listed here. Okay, so every possible source that's actually in there is listed there. So I wanted to give you an introduction to actually how this works in the real world, and then get you as part of this module to actually make your own much smaller little Omeka and actually gather things up, and then encourage students to actually do the same, possibly as some part of a project. So notice that having a whole lot of different things and trying to organize them into a museum is kind of like when I was giving you the kind of silly example. If you look at the 82 J.C. Penney catalog, it's kind of like finding this catalog and then looking, particularly if you look at the first pages, which are not really by department, and seeing all of these very different items that don't seem to fit in any particular major group, and then trying to figure out a way to actually organize this group. Okay, so read a little farther, and then in the next video, I'll show you how to set up an Omeka installation.